am 71 years old, and I am going to tell you something that may shatter your world. Everything you know about achievements and successful aging is a grand lie that I myself believed for the first 50 years of my life. Society, your teachers, and even your parents tell you, sacrifice the present for the future. Work yourself to exhaustion, and then you will earn the right to live. I was the perfect product of this system. In New York, they called me Iron Catherine. I was the founder of one of the most aggressive architectural firms in Manhattan. I had a career that others envied, a penthouse overlooking Central Park, and respect that bordered on fear. I thought I was in complete control of my life. I believed that my body was just a mechanism that had to obey my will. But at the age of 50, something happened that shattered my illusion. And what I discovered over the next 21 years completely changed my understanding of life, death, and everything in between. I'm not making this video to impress you or show you how wise I am. I'm making it because my clock is ticking louder and louder, and there are things you need to hear before it's too late. Not for me, for you. You see, success is the most insidious trap. You only realize that the ladder was leaning against the wrong wall when you're standing on the top step and there's nothing but emptiness below. At 50, I experienced what I had chosen to ignore for years, the consequences of endless coffee, sleepless nights, and stress that I ate away. Doctors diagnosed me with type 2 diabetes at 45, but I just dismissed it. I don't have time for diets and blood sugar measurements. I have a tender for the development of Brooklyn. And then, during a crucial meeting, with hundreds of millions of dollars at stake, my body simply shut down. I remember how the numbers on the screen began to blur, turning into bizarre Rorschach blots. And then silence. The darkness wasn't black, it was empty. I woke up 3 days later in the intensive care unit at Presbyterian Hospital. It was a diabetic coma. My mouth tasted like burnt metal, my body felt foreign, and dozens of tubes were coming out of my veins. In the corner of the room, I saw my daughters, Emma and Sarah. They weren't crying. They just stared at me with a strange, detached expression on their faces. I realized that they didn't see me as their mother, but as an efficient ATM that had suddenly broken down. The doctor said I was lucky to come out of the coma without irreversible brain damage. Lucky? I had come face to face with my own mortality, and they called it luck. But lying there, unable to even lift a glass of water, I realized something terrifying. If I hadn't woken up, the world would not have stopped. My partners were already dividing up my shares, my clients were looking for new agencies, and my daughters. They would have simply inherited my millions without ever knowing who I really was. I had spent 50 years building towers of glass, but I found myself inside the most fragile one. Let me tell you about the biggest lie you're probably telling yourself every single day. It's an American mantra: I have time. I'll do it later. In our culture, we've elevated later to the status of a religion. We believe that happiness is not what happens now, but a prize that awaits us at the end of the marathon. I've seen young sharks on Wall Street and in design firms, guys in their 20s, 30s, even 40s, and they all say the same thing, like clockwork. When I close this round of investments, then I'll be happy. When I become a senior partner, then I'll finally be able to relax. When my kids get into the Ivy League, then I'll start traveling. When I retire and cash in my options, then I'll finally do what I love. Let me save you 50 years of regret with one simple truth that I realized while staring at the 4 in my hospital room. That day will never come. You know why? Because in America, the goal is always changing. You get $100,000 bonus, and suddenly you realize you need $1 million. You buy a house in the Hamptons, and then you discover your neighbor's yacht is longer than yours. You're always chasing something unattainable because our system is designed to make you never feel enough. And before you know it, you're 70 years old, sitting in your impeccably designed chair, wondering where the hell your life went. I spent 30 years climbing the corporate ladder, only to realize at the top that it was leaning against the wrong wall. And the scariest thing is that time doesn't work like the stock market. You can't write off your losses and start over. Seconds lived cannot be refinanced. Here's what no one tells you in business school or at motivational seminars in Texas. Success is a terrible, toxic goal. And I say this as a woman who has achieved everything Forbes writes about. I became a legend in my niche. I bought myself freedom that smells like the expensive leather of a private jet. I enjoyed respect that was more like worship, and you know what? None of it mattered when I was in a coma. In America, we worship at the altar of productivity, but this God never gives comfort. You achieve a goal, sign the contract of the century, and for about 48 hours you feel amazing. It's like a shot of dopamine straight to the brain. But then the effect wears off. You return to your original state of emptiness. Now you need a new goal, a greater achievement, even louder recognition. It's a hamster wheel covered in gold. I had a close friend, let's call him Dick. He was the classic embodiment of the American dream. Dick worked 80 hours a week his entire life, built a multi-million-dollar logistics empire, and never took a real vacation. He considered rest a sign of weakness. He constantly said that next year, he would hand over the business and go on a trip around the world with his wife. The next year came, and he had a stroke right on the golf course in Greenwich. At his lavish funeral, his son stood in front of a coffin that cost as much as a year's budget for a high school and said, "My father was a great businessman, but I hardly knew what his favorite color was." Is that the legacy you want to leave behind? Do you think your children will remember your annual reports? No, they will remember your absence. You won't regret failed deals, trust me, at 70, they seem like dust. You'll haul with pain because you didn't take that trip to Japan because you were too busy. You'll hate yourself for the relationship with your sister that you let fall apart over trifles. The time I didn't spend with my daughters when they were little is what gnaws at me now more than any illness. It's the missed opportunities, the paths not taken, and the love I locked away in the safe of my vanity. New York is a city that feeds on your time. I remember the noise, the constant hum of yellow taxis, the sharp whistles of the doormen at the Plaza Hotel, and the incessant rhythm of construction, which was sweeter to me than any music. My office on the 42nd floor was my temple. There, I felt like a god. Through the panoramic windows, I looked down at people who looked like ants and thought I had conquered this life. But when I came out of the coma and returned to my empty penthouse, New York suddenly fell silent. I sat in my $12,000 Eames chair, looked at the city lights, and realized that I was the richest man in the graveyard of my hopes. The people you love, your parents, your loved ones, you think you have unlimited time to spend with them. But life in America is a subscription that can be canceled at any moment without notice. My father died when I was 45. He was a simple teacher from Wisconsin, a man who believed in the value of Sunday dinners. We had a complicated relationship. I thought he wasn't ambitious enough, and he thought I was losing my soul in the pursuit of concrete. I was always too busy for him. I remember him calling me at the office, and I would ask my secretary to say I was in a meeting, even though I just didn't want to break my work trance. I thought we would have time to talk when I slowed down. We never got that chance. Diabetic coma took him away in one night while I was reviewing stadium blueprints in Qatar. And you know what I regret most now, at 71? Not the lost court cases. I think about those Sundays when I ignored his calls. Those Thanksgivings when I sat at the table with the turkey, but had my nose buried in my BlackBerry. The contrast between my successful life and the emptiness left by my father's death was unbearable. I built the strongest bridges in New York, but I couldn't build a path to my own father's heart. After the sugar coma, something broke inside me. Or rather, something finally fell into place. I returned to the office a month later. The noise of Manhattan outside the window seemed the same. Ambulance sirens, street vendors shouting, an endless stream of people in gray suits running after their first million. But for me, everything had changed. I looked at my young employees, ambitious, with burning eyes, drinking their fifth espresso of the morning, and saw ghosts in them. They were sacrificing their health and sleep for their careers, just as I had done. I made radical changes. I stepped down as CEO. I started turning down projects that would have brought me even more influence, but would have taken away the last years of my life. I started agreeing to things I had put off for decades. In the last 21 years, I have learned more about life in the United States than in the previous 52 years of success. The contrast was striking. Before, my day was scheduled down to the minute: meetings, phone calls, reports. Now my day consisted of little things that I used to think were a waste of time. What matters is ridiculously simple. Time spent with loved ones without a phone in my hand. Work that benefits not only my bank account, but also someone's life. The ability to taste my food, rather than wolfing it down on the run between terminals at JFK Airport. I know that to an ambitious 30-year-old American, this sounds like a loss. I myself would roll my eyes if I heard that. But Catherine, I have a mortgage, I have bills, I have ambitions, you might say. Yes, you do. I'm not telling you to drop everything and go to a monastery. I'm saying, don't sacrifice what is eternal for what is temporary. If you died tomorrow right in your office, your desk would be cleared for a new employee in 2 days. But the emptiness in your children's hearts would remain forever. What are you doing today that is so important that you are willing to risk your one precious life? I am 71 years old. And I am damn lucky that after that coma, I not only survived, but also retained my mental clarity. But every morning, when the sun begins to illuminate the tops of the skyscrapers in Central Park, I wake up with the same thought: I am living on borrowed time. In fact, we all live on borrowed time from eternity, but most of you, young, bold, flying down Fifth Avenue with your iPhones in your hands, don't realize it. You act as if you're invincible. You think you have all eternity and endless credit in the bank of time. But that's not the case. Death is the only creditor who never forgets a debt. I now have 3 grandchildren, 3 little bright lights in whom I see the continuation of my family line. And when I look at their parents, my daughters, I see the same destructive patterns of behavior that once nearly destroyed me. They are stressed. They are constantly on the verge of a breakdown. They chase after things that will not make them happy: prestigious schools for their children, approval on social media, status in a society that doesn't care about them. They are making the same mistakes I did. And I try to explain this to them, try to share what I paid for with 3 days in darkness. But you know what? They don't listen. Not because they are bad children, but because they are in the epicenter of the American storm. They don't see the patterns yet. They think their situation is unique, that the old rules don't apply to them, that they are exceptions to the rules of biology and the soul. That's why I'm making this video. Because maybe if this message reaches you through the screen, some of you will actually listen. Someone will make a different choice tonight. Someone will avoid those black holes of regret that haunt people like me on quiet nights. You are getting closer to the end of your journey with every second that passes, and no $1 million in your 401k will buy you an extra breath when your time is up. So, what are you going to do? Keep putting off that phone call to your mother? Keep telling yourself you'll take that dream trip when the market stabilizes? Keep believing you'll find time for your kids later, when you finish this damn project. Wake up. The perfect moment is a myth created by those too afraid to live. If I could go back to that noisy, crazy New York of 30 years ago and meet myself, that confident, iron Catherine, I would grab her by the shoulders and shake her until the phone fell out of her hands. I would say to her, stop trying to impress people who will forget your name a week after your funeral. Stop sacrificing your body for the corporate hierarchy. Stop putting off joy for the damn later. Start living now. Not next year. Not after you get that promotion. Now. Because I promise you life will always be messy, complicated, and full of reasons to wait. But if you wait, you'll just find that you've waited your whole life. I am 71 years old. If I'm lucky, I have 10 or 15 years left. Maybe less. And I'm okay with that because the last 21 years have been the most fulfilling of my life. Not because I made more money, but because I finally started living consciously. I saw Kyoto during the cherry blossom season. I reconnected with my daughters. I forgave myself for the past. Now that I have less time left, I am 1,000 times happier than I was at 30, when I thought the whole world was at my feet. Stop right now. Turn off this video in a minute and do what you've been putting off. Call someone you love. Book a ticket. Say no to overtime work that drains your energy. Choose life, not its imitation. You have a choice today, and I beg you, don't waste it. Don't wait for a coma to wake you up. Live so that when you're 70, you have something to remember besides quarterly reports. Your time is limited. Your life is precious. The clock is ticking. What will you do with your today? You know, I've spent most of my life designing buildings made of the most expensive concrete and steel. I thought strength was measured in pounds per square inch. But standing here, in the final chapter of my journey, I realized that the only architecture that matters is the architecture of your soul. In America, we are obsessed with the appearance of our lives. We polish our resumes, our facades, and our LinkedIn profiles, but inside, many of us are abandoned construction sites, overgrown with weeds of resentment and fear. We fear silence because in silence we hear the ticking of those very clocks that remind us of the promises we have not kept to ourselves. My main project now is not a new skyscraper, but how I will spend tomorrow morning. When I look at the New York skyline, I no longer see just office blocks. I see thousands of people who, like me once, voluntarily locked themselves in golden cages. I want you to understand, your value is not determined by your title. Your legacy is not the amount in your bank account. Your legacy is the warmth you leave in people's hearts and the moments when you were truly alive. Don't let the fear of not succeeding in your career steal your life away. Fear is a poor advisor, and greed is an endless pit. Stop. Breathe in this air. Feel your heart beating right now. It is the most precious gift you have. Use it wisely. Don't wait for a coma. Don't wait for tragedy. Start building something real today. After all, when the lights go out in the hall, all that will remain is how much you loved and how courageously you lived. If this message resonates with your heart, if it makes you think for even a second about where you are running, don't just let that feeling pass. Subscribe to the channel. Here we talk about the truth that is often hidden behind the glamour of success. Become part of a community of people who choose to live consciously. Your subscription helps us spread these important lessons further. Write in the comments. What one thing have you been putting off for years and are ready to do this week? What someday will you turn into today? I read your stories, and they inspire me to keep going. Like this video. It's a simple gesture, but it helps algorithms show this video to those who are on the verge of burnout and despair. Your like could save someone's life today. Share this video. Send it to a friend, colleague, or family member who works too much. Sometimes a short video is just the wake-up call someone needs to wake up and start living.